Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome EVP Technology and Chief Digital Officer, United Airlines, Linda Jojo, in discussion with Skift Aviation Business Editor, Brian Summers.
All right. Hello again, everybody. It's good to be back. I don't know Linda that well, but we spoke a little bit before. Yeah. But I am probably the #1 user worldwide of your app, because I'm just obsessed with it.
I can probably check that, you know.
Oh, I bet you'd find that to be true. But just a broad question for you first, because you are the EVP of Technology and Chief Digital Officer. You've been there about 3.5 years. Yeah. You came from outside the airline industry. We often think about airlines as being a little bit behind digitally and tech-wise. When you arrived at United 3.5 years ago, what did you find, both the good and the bad?
Well, you know, of course, I did read the newspaper before coming, and so we had been in the news for some fairly spectacular technology challenges, and so I kind of had low expectations. But what I really found was a very dedicated team who was really focused on trying to make things better, and what it was all about was getting them better aligned. So I was pleasantly surprised.
Okay. And you had said that we have heard United and actually every airline be in the news because of system outages,
right,
flights being delayed. And you said you have had none major in the last 3.5 years. Is that just luck, or are you guys doing things better?
No, we've had some things. What I would say, and many of you know this, just the nature of the business we're in, we have very, very little time for recovery. It's about 20, 25 minutes. And so when you start with an issue, and then have to kind of go through that troubleshooting process, it's pretty soon that you're impacting customers, and customers today are very connected and can start tweeting or emailing or otherwise about it. But what the reality is you have to get great at recovery, and you have to get really connected with the operation so that everybody is working in lockstep in those 20 or 25 minutes. You don't even waste 30 seconds of that time. So we're very focused on that.
Okay. So if you talk about recovery being important, that's a sort of a nice way of saying, look, these things are going to happen.
Something is probably wrong right now. Let's face it. If I check my phone, so there's something that's not working.
Okay.
Yeah. And I'm hopeful that no customers noticed.
I've been covering airlines for about 5 years, and so that means I've only seen boom, right? I've never seen bust. Maybe that will be coming at some point. Now you have big profits, you can invest in technology. But when you arrived, did you realize that maybe airlines had underspent in technology just because they didn't have the cash?
You know, actually, I think that the investments in technology were always there. I think the reality is we were at a pivot point. And I actually had joined from a Canadian telecom company. And so what I really saw was that really mobility has really come of age, has just kind of come of age. The coverage was enough and fast enough. The devices were hardy enough. And so really it was just ripe for investment in mobile. And right now, after airline purchases, our #2 investment is in technology.
Okay. A couple hours ago, we had Mark Nasser on stage, and
before I know, I saw him in the green room.
Before he was at Air Canada, he was at United, and he worked on this app that I'm talking about. Yep. And it's a pretty good app, but it's also essentially the same app that Mark and his team created a decade ago. But you said that you're making some changes to it. What new functionality will it have? Well,
we're not going to take away any of the things you love, and I know you asked Mark about where's my plane and where's my flight, and that's all going to still be there. But the reality is that apps have changed, and we don't want to just be the best airline app. We want to be the best app in your wallet or on your phone, and we want to make sure that it works that way. So we're going to start changing around some of the usability, for example, making it scroll up and down. And then probably the biggest thing we'll do is make it much more contextual, so that if you have a flight and you're eligible to check in, we'll just have that be the first thing you see. Once you're checked in, your boarding pass will be there. Once you're in the airport, we know that because you scanned in, we'll be able to help direct you through the airport to your connecting gate. When you're on the plane, the entertainment will come up first. So it'll be much more contextual.
Is anything going to be about the app going to be like a holy moly thing? My goodness, they figured something amazing out?
I think over time we're going to do that. I think that's true. But right now we're just going to do that first flip, and then from there we'll start adding some things.
Okay. I want to get a little bit to talking about personalization,
Yep.
and I want to make it personal.
Okay.
So I'm from Chicago. I've been flying United Airlines since the early 1980s. I've been a Mileage Plus member since about 1985. What do you know about me?
A lot.
Okay.
We keep track, obviously, of where you fly, how you fly, what choices you make, what's available to you, and then what choices that you actually make so that we can, over time, give you better recommendations and more relevant offers. And so we absolutely do that. We obviously, from a regulatory perspective, have to keep a little bit about you in terms of your passports and things like that. So we have all that. But we don't, if you're asking, could I go back and find the first flight you ever took on us? The answer is no. I mean, we don't keep that stuff online. It's probably 7 years or so that we have.
But you are able to use what you know about me to personalize offers to me, Brian?
Yes.
Okay. So what might you offer something based on what you know about them?
If there's a route that you fly a lot, if you're heading from LA to Orlando a lot and you have to connect through somewhere, if you always tend to connect through the same airport, or you always tend to fly in the morning with your baby girl or something, then what we would do is probably put those right to the top, the kinds of flights that you would actually want to take.
Okay. So you will know before I do what flight I want to take, or you think you will?
We'll make some recommendations. You can pick whatever you want.
Okay.
Yeah.
And this has come up at times before. I mean, do you have a general idea of whether I'm spending my own money or Rafat's, my CEO's money, and offer me different prices? Not prices, different listings based on what you know?
Well, we're starting to think about the day of travel a little bit different, and whether you're on a business trip or on a personal trip, and then again making some offers around what are the things you'd be interested in if you are traveling on business versus with your family, or whether going on vacation, or whether you're on a in and out trip for a business purpose. And so we'll make offers that are more relevant based on that.
Okay. If you look into your crystal ball into the future, when personalization gets better, I mean, are there any things that you'd love to do if you were able to do them as far as personalizing offers?
I think it's kind of interesting, and the other thing that we're doing with this information is we're actually trying to arm our employees with information about who is that person that is seated in 7C, and what is their most recent experiences with United Airlines, so that our flight attendants can actually have a better way of interacting with them. But the reality is that the line between personalized and creepy is different for different people. So, for example, we have your birthday because we need to keep that for when you travel. And so, do you like it when we come up and wish you happy birthday or not? Those kinds of things. Do we want to? Do you like that we know this is the flight that you're crossing over 1 million miles? That one people usually like, and so we want to recognize you for when that happens. But we're trying to figure out where does that line fall, and how much is it that, from a trust perspective, is there.
For a while, I feel like the flight attendants were wishing people a happy birthday.
They definitely are.
Do they still do it?
Yep.
Okay. And feedback is, this is creepy or this is interesting?
They ask how you know, and we're pretty, the flight attendants do not have the year, I'll tell you that. They know your month and the day of your birth, but not the year of your birth, so that we keep that off. But I think generally, first of all, in my flight this morning, I was talking to the flight attendants, the crew, on my flight in this morning, and we were talking about the app that they get to use, and they just love it, because the more information that we can give them about what's happening, the better they can serve our customers, and so that's just been a really big win. And we're trying all kinds of things. We make changes to that app every couple of weeks. And sometimes, just like a product company, sometimes we try it and we'll pull it back if it isn't working as well, and then we'll tweak it and put it back out again, versus waiting till it's perfect and delivering it.
I also wanted to ask you about voice. You guys are early adopters of Alexa.
Yep.
Southwest was here earlier. They're not as into it. But what do you see as the opportunity in voice?
When you work in a large corporate technology department and you want to talk about innovation, you got to start thinking about, hey, how are some ways that we can get everybody engaged in trying new things? And this is in Chicago and Houston, where our teams are located. And frankly, this was an idea from somebody that was in our group. He said, I want to try seeing if we can introduce an Alexa skill. And I said, okay, good. He goes, here it is. It took him 2 weeks. He just did it on his own time and just tried it. And then we have since ported that also over to Google Home. But what we're learning is just little things about how voice applications work. And frankly, it's not like we have thousands and thousands of people checking in on Alexa. But as a technology organization, we now have a little bit of experience with how that works. And if that ever were to take off, or there was a place that voice was going to be there, then we would, we've got a little bit of a leg up on that. I will say there's one very good use case. I have a Google Home that I use for my alarm clock. And some of those days when I'm packing my bag and haven't checked in, I can go ahead and check into my flight while I'm packing. So there's a tiny use case. It's kind of cool.
You were telling me earlier something interesting you learned about when people need to check in, they say the flight number, but they don't say it the way you expected them to?
Well, no, actually it was the voice coming back would say, I'm going to check you into flight 288. And we never say that. We would say flight 288. So we just had, that's an example of the things that we just had to tweak.
Are there other things like that as well? Or?
Learning how to handle conversational voice is a little bit different than how a programmer would think about doing some of those things. So we just kind of learned along the way how to better interpret conversational voice.
Okay.
Checking in is a little simple, so it's also a good way to do that.
Great. All right, so you've been trialing this program, I think, in Chicago and Houston called Every Flight Has a Story.
Yep.
And it's sort of interesting because you're giving people just a little bit more information about their flight delay than you would ordinarily. So how's it working?
Yeah, it's working great. Actually, it's Houston, Chicago, Phoenix, and a few other places, I think. And we're doing this. We're starting slow. And we're expanding. We're now just doing flights that have a delay of more than an hour, and we're trying to get away from that kind of generic, your flight has been delayed due to operational difficulties or technical difficulties or something like that, and trying to give a little bit more color to what's happening. We have plenty of room to do this, and so on the app. And so what we're doing is we'll say, your inbound aircraft is delayed due to weather at its origination. We have swapped aircraft, but your plane will not be available for 20 more minutes. That's almost a word-for-word example that we'll put. So the reason for your delay is for that reason. And we're starting to figure out what the patterns are. What again is too much information. We don't have to give you the exact component that the mechanical issue is. Just that there is and we're using words like a non-standard or complex or some kind of wording that we're trying to kind of gives you a feel for what it is, but not getting too geeked out from an airline terminology perspective. And it's very well received in terms of just being more transparent, being more specific about what happens. It's been a big hit, and so we'll be scaling that over the summer.
And there is some concern, right? If you tell people, in the past, you'd say the flight is delayed due to mechanical difficulties, and people get upset, but they understand it. But if you say the flight is delayed because of an engine issue, and there's engine issues in the news, people may freak out, right?
Some might. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
so you have to be a little bit careful.
You want to be factual, but you don't necessarily need to get into all that detail. Yeah, you're right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do people trust airlines? Do they trust what you have to say?
I think we're finding that if you're transparent and people believe you're transparent, they will trust you, yes.
Okay. One of the things that I've done on United's app quite a bit is I just buy plane tickets because it's really easy. It's essentially frictionless. Am I the only one buying tickets on a mobile app, or are other people doing it too?
No, and some of the other folks you talk to, so we started off with a website, and we thought about that website as a place where people would go and research and purchase tickets, and then we created the mobile app as a day of travel, check in, change your seat, find out what gate to go to, that kind of thing. The reality is it's all merged and conversion. So what's really happening under the covers, there's going to be some nice new things up front with contextual, but it's really pulling as much functionality as we can out of the mobile app and out of the website and into the mobile app. And then we've got another one that kind of sits in the middle, our mobile.united.com, which will be a website that basically we'll use for localizations, especially language localizations, just so we don't get a massively bloated native Apple app. We'll do it that way. So we'll have three platforms with the same code base.
Okay. You'll correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it takes me maybe 3 clicks on the app to buy a plane ticket.
Yeah, if you're signed in already, for sure.
All right.
Yeah.
And I buy a lot of stuff on United.com. I also buy a lot of stuff on Amazon. It's only 1 click.
Yeah.
Do you get there someday, or you don't need to?
Wait a minute.
I'm saying,
you mean like
could I buy a plane ticket with only 1 click, like I buy the stuff on Amazon?
Yeah, one of the clicks, though, is picking your passenger and picking your seat, right? So,
okay.
I mean, you don't do that on Amazon yet anyway.
Okay.
Yeah.
More broadly, what do companies like Amazon do better than airlines still?
Well, they're digital first.
Yeah.
That's pretty clear, and that's what we are absolutely trying to strive for. What we get is that when people are using our apps on our websites, they're not thinking and saying, okay, I'm going to give this company a pass because they've been around for 100 years and they must have a lot of infrastructure. And so, we're really trying to say, hey, how can we actually be more like that and be really digital first? And, we've got the same kind of teams. We do A/B testing. We do all of the same kinds of things that Amazon does. We're just a little bit newer at it, but, we admire what they do.
All right, I got a lot of press releases from some of your competitors about things like biometric boarding or getting into the lounge, using biometrics.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think that this is a gimmick, or someday is that how we're going to get on airplanes?
Right now, that innovation and trying things, we are kind of sitting down more in that let's do it in 2 weeks with voice than do these things that have large needs for lots of infrastructure in lots of places. I think biometrics are coming. I think that governments are very interested in that, and therefore if that gets out into the security side of the house, then it's actually going to flow in and we'll want to use it. We're sitting back a little bit right now, letting some of those early kinks come out because of the size of the airline, we have to have such scale before it really changes a customer's experience. We'd rather focus on things that we can do much more quickly, and we'll fast follow on that.
Great. I asked you if there was anything before that keeps you up at night, and of course you said you sleep very well.
It's not enough.
But the thing you said does worry you is issues of cybersecurity.
Sure.
What specifically?
I think just fundamentally, there's way more bad guys out there than I'll ever be able to hire. And it's a cliche, but they have to be right once, and we have to be right every time. And it sounds a little trite, but it is a very serious thing. And so, what I will tell you is that airlines, this is a fiercely competitive industry. There's no doubt about it. But we don't compete on safety, and we don't compete on cyber. And so we are very well connected in through industry groups with airlines, but also the different manufacturers of various components. And it's a very rapid sharing of information. And so if there is something that's happening somewhere else, we find out about it way before it hits, if it were to hit the news, so that we could actually try and inoculate or make sure that it doesn't spread to our areas. So spend a lot of time.
Is there any specific type of attack that really worries you?
Well, I mean, the thing is, any kind of attack you can think of, an airline would be a target. Our miles programs are if you were to be able to consume and buy a ticket and fly on the same day, it's almost like cash. There's obviously the national security. There's even just the fact that we're a big company and somebody might want to do it. So I don't think of any one threat. Any given day, I might be worried about one thing more than another, but generally, I worry equally about all of it.
Okay. Airline people often talk about how, you can't compromise on safety. Safety is the #1 priority. You have to be very careful with everything that you do safety. Here in Silicon Valley, one of those buzz phrases is fail fast, right? It's just much different. Are you able to bring a fail fast mentality to the digital arm of United?
We're absolutely focused on that. We actually use that term, and it's in places that are not on those edges. But we're trying things to see if we can use natural language processing to take mechanics, handwritten notes, and see if we can actually get that a little bit more structured. And some things we tried worked really well, and some things we tried just didn't work very well. We had some ideas around catering and how we could actually be more efficient and waste less food, frankly, and found that there was a huge amount of infrastructure on the back end. It wasn't as simple as it looks, and so we've had to kind of repivot on some of that stuff.
But you weren't involved in this tomato juice incident, right? they took tomato juice off airplanes for a month.
So, so those of you that don't know, we did some. I will tell you we did a lot of analysis. We have a lot of data, and I don't have that. I didn't know you were going to ask me that, or I would have had the number. But it's a ridiculously small number of people that actually drink tomato juice on our flights. We count the cans going in, we count the cans coming out. We know the answer. However, apparently those tomato drinkers are extremely vocal and very good. And very, very good at social media. And we follow our social media feeds, and so we did put tomato juice back on.
So it really surprised you that there were that many complaints?
Statistically, it makes, they don't drink it, and they still aren't, by the way. But it's back on. Yeah. There was not like a pent-up demand for tomato juice when we put it back, so.
All right, it's time for some audience questions. Sure. You can see them as well as I can. You said you wanted to preferred to answer digital questions. How do you feel about that first one there?
Sure.
All right. How is United?
They're all anonymous, though. It's kind of funny how people ask questions and don't say who they are.
He keeps asking.
What's that?
Anonymous keeps asking.
It's the same person. Okay. Well, yeah.
How are you working to improve customer satisfaction and NPS scores and reduce PR nightmares?
Yeah. I mean, we're maniacally focused on this in terms of customer satisfaction. It is absolutely something that it's very important to arrive on time, but it's also very important to have a good customer experience. We're rolling out something called the Core 4, which is really with our employees trying to talk about what does it mean, to change that culture. And the Core 4 is safety, caring, dependable, and efficient. And so those are in that order are the things. So the fact that we've got caring very high on the list right after safety is a very important thing that we're doing to make sure that we kind of work that. We're also, I think we learned a lot about the power of social media. We learned it very fast. I was just talking to somebody this morning about it. We are much more sophisticated in our ability to understand what's happening on social media, what's trending, how we can actually manage through that. It is a technology issue in that perspective. We've invested a lot in that. And then we absolutely are measuring NPS and looking at what are the different ways that we can do that. So
great.
We're all over. It's going to take some time, but we're very committed to it.
Good way to segue into this next question about social media.
Yep.
If a customer complains on Twitter or social media and identifies themselves, do you integrate that Twitter data into their profile?
Yes.
How do you do it?
We have a place for it.
Okay.
You can actually, and we're going to start asking people for their Twitter handles as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
So if I don't actually complain,
if you identify, we're not running around trying to match it, but if you tell us who you are, what your Mileage Plus number is, and your Twitter handle, we absolutely are keeping track.
And it just goes back a number of years, or it will go back a number of years?
You'll go into just like your birthday doesn't change, your Twitter handle probably doesn't either, so.
Right.
Yeah.
All right, let's do one more. I'm going to go with the second one because I have that power. How does the process of developing and releasing new features look at UA? How agile is your company?
Yeah. We're still not agile enough, but we don't do multi-year projects. Frankly, we don't even do multi-month projects. We're trying to break things down into the smallest pieces possible. It's still taking an awful long time to, upgrade our general ledger and some of that other stuff. But in terms of our customer-facing tools and a lot of those employee tools, we're putting releases out sometimes every day, every couple of weeks, depending on what it is. And we're doing A/B testing all the time, tweaking things all the time.
Great. We are out of time. Thank you so much.
Time flies. Thanks,
I know.
Brian.